I am Peyton Pratt, and I'm a doctoral student at the University of Oklahoma. And then we also have Mallory Deerdorf with us today, if she wants to introduce herself.
Good morning.
And then Lori Chestnut is not with us today, but she is the program specialist there at the State Department. And so we're here if you have any questions about today, or otherwise I'll share our contact information again at this training. But I think most of you have received emails, at least from myself. So as always, welcome Holly, but as always, you're encouraged to use this chat box. You can keep your microphones muted unless I've asked a question, and you feel free to share that way, and just continue to be respectful of each other. You guys have done so well already in all of our trainings, just listening and learning together. And there'll be a couple QR codes again today, and so those will be available as well. And so just to start out, I have a couple questions. If you want to answer one of them, all of them, that's fine. But just kind of to get started thinking about the student involvement on the IEP, I want to hear what you guys think. We'll start with the first two. What helps students be involved in the IEP, and what do you think prevents students from being involved in the IEP? Feel free to unmute yourself and share out, or put it in the chat box. For those of you that are just now joining us, I'm going to go ahead and put the link again in the chat box for you guys to sign in for today. But right now, I'm just asking everybody to share something that they think helps students be involved in the IEP, and potentially something that you think prevents students, or that's a barrier for that involvement. Yeah, teacher knowledge. Yes, it's super important and a big predictor. I even think when I was teaching elementary, there wasn't a lot out there and about how do I involve students at an elementary level, and what does this look like with that population of students. And it's also okay if you guys don't know anything that helps or prevents. That's kind of what we're going to talk about today. So I'll give you guys a second longer to see if you want to share out something you think helps or potentially prevents student involvement. Family perceptions, yes, definitely. I think a lot of times we deal with even parents maybe not wanting their student to know they have a disability, or not wanting them to know they're on an IEP and things like that. Yeah, parents are really reluctant. Yes, exactly, Kim, exactly. So the next two kind of questions kind of go together as well. So what is one of your specific concerns, or something that you fear of implementing student involvement in the IEP in your classroom, as well as if you'd go ahead and rate your current implementation of student involvement. And if there's not, that's okay also. We're going to give you guys some strategies today. So if you'd share one of your personal concerns with it, as well as kind of what level you are right now. I know when I was still a teacher, my main concern was, and it wasn't necessarily a concern, it was more like, well, I teach elementary, this isn't my necessarily responsibility. Yes, how will you get all the legal stuff done? That's a big thing too. Yeah, making sure you have all these check boxes that you're supposed to talk about, the IEP and those things. Later in the presentation, we're going to talk about IEP PowerPoints and templates, and that's a great way to kind of hit on some of that stuff. Does anyone else have any concerns? Yeah, love for the older students to be involved so they're aware of their goals. Yes, super important. Meeting time restrictions, that's hard too, Kim. Yeah, I think there was often times that I would get like a student show up on my ed plan, and it would be like, oh, the IEP is due tomorrow. I've never met this student. And so sometimes it feels like, this is unrealistic. I don't even know the student to write an ed plan, or write an IEP, let alone have them be involved in the process. Oh, and Lori is jumping on to join us as well. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and move forward. I appreciate y'all's honesty. So just a quick review. I know in our second big coaching session. So the second full day coaching session, we talked a little bit about what student involvement in the IEP is. Does anyone remember, or do you have an opinion on what you believe student involvement in the IEP is, like a definition or something? Again, feel free to just share out chat box or unmute yourself. You know, I think a very common thing for believing what student involvement in the IEP is just having the students there. Like that can be a great first step, and just including this process. It's okay if you don't have a full idea. We're gonna give you some quick ideas today. So federal law talks about the transition plan, as well as, which we've talked about, as well as student involvement in the IEP. And so it says when appropriate, but it's required starting at the minimum age of 16. So in Oklahoma, we say transition must begin prior to that 9th grade year, or potentially earlier, depending on the student. And so at that point, we start inviting students to their IEP. Obviously, this can be done before, but legally, that's what Oklahoma says. And if the student does not attend the IEP, then you have to really make sure those preference, interests, needs, all of that is included. And that's a great way of incorporating those spin and arc statements that we talked about in the first check-in session, as well as incorporating those interest inventories and those things. And although law doesn't say active role is necessary, research shows that active participation and involvement in IEP really leads to that post-secondary success. So first, let's talk about attendance versus participation. And so we want students to start out at that moment of attending and coming, but that's just the first step, because being there is not participating. And in reality, we want them participating, if not just leading their IEP. And so participation can look like introducing different people. It can look like talking about their goals, talking about their strengths, interests. It can talk about their post-secondary goals, not just academic goals, or it can talk about the accommodations they need. There's so many different ways to allow students to do what we call leadership. And so this student involvement in IEP, really we want it to go that next step, to be this leadership, and for students not just to be attending, not just to be participating, but to really be leading their IEP meetings and be an important part. If you think back to that Why Is My Cake on Fire article, we talked a lot about who talks the most at IEP meetings. And if you haven't noticed by now, I can talk a lot. And so at my IEP meetings, I look back and I was for sure the #1 person talking in those IEP meetings. And I led it, I talked about it, and I really left any time for parents, let alone the students themselves, to share their input. And so this is really, really important, giving them those opportunities to take those leadership roles. Now, of course, this will look different at every level and with every student. And so we do have a couple examples. So hopefully I'll be able to get this to play where you guys can hear it. But this is a really great video about the student Garrett and his own involvement in his IEP. So let's see if I can get this to go. Hopefully you guys will be able to hear it. If someone would give me a thumbs up, if you could hear it.
I don't really have the title. I'm just a code guy. Whatever they need me to do, I'm there. You know, every kid's dream is to work to earn money, and I really want to go to UNH, play one on the computer, and type up how much money do you have to saved in order to go to UNH. So I wrote down that amount of money and I'm saving it. Good morning, everybody. My name is Garrett Sales. I'm a sophomore at Conwell High School. Let me tell you about myself. My interest: eating chocolate and peanut butter, playing captain flag and unified basketball, learning more about being independent to prepare for college. My abilities: interacting with people, playing sports, making friends. Things that are harder for me. I'm born more than one or two directions. Geometry, Mumbai.
So you had a huge year with transition.
I'll say.
You are one of the few sophomores I know that has a job. And you pretty much got that all by yourself.
Our biggest thing is working towards that goal of independence. That's really huge for him.
So,
Next year too, I think we talked about doing interns.
Yeah.
Yep, and getting you outside of the building, even maybe going down to the middle school or some of the other schools around
that's the
here.
goal. Yep, that's I really want to do. I really work well with young children. I am going to start looking at colleges.
Okay. So you've been doing very well in English class.
I feel like I get distracted very easily though with like other classmates of mine.
Mom and Dad are here, and I'm here, and Miss Mon is here, and these ladies are here. We're all here for you. And so when you have frustrations, you're like, I just don't get it. Okay.
And Gary, remember, when you're feeling overwhelmed, go to those first couple slides, which is who you are as a person. Goes so much farther than anything, and that is that you get along really well with people. You have people skills. You're caring, you're loving, you're outgoing. Those go a long way. And remember that when you're feeling overwhelmed, okay, I'm really a great person, and I just want to push myself farther.
Yep.
So don't get too overwhelmed about stuff.
Okay.
I thought this was a great meeting. Can I do the last slide?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you all for coming. Thanks for all your help. And yeah.
I love it. That's awesome.
I feel like obviously it's all about me in the end. It's my IP meeting. I'm in charge of it.
You did a good job leading your
Do you
own
have
meeting
anybody
for the
else?
first time.
No, I think we covered everything.
Okay, I don't know if it's your first time watching this video, but every time I watch this video, multiple things hit me. But one is just how many people are in this room, that it's so awesome that all of his teachers are really engaged in this and excited about this. But Garrett is a great example of how he can go in there. He talked about really necessary components of that IEP. So those strengths, his needs, they talked about goals, questions, introduced himself and people, and he really took charge. I know that's the title of the video, but he really does have leadership within his IEP. And so another very common concern people have is, what does this look like for students with more intensive support needs or students with more significant disabilities? So I also have a video on Sydney, and this is a really great one as well, but it's short. So I'll let you guys watch this one as well. Well, I don't know. I don't hear the volume. Let me go this way. Okay, let's try this again.
All right, Sydney, we're going to start
We good?
on picking your pictures for your presentation today. Let's start with your first slide. I want Sydney to be as involved as possible in creating her PowerPoint for her presentation at her IEP. In the past, the students in our class have not been involved at all in the IEP process. So this was a way to bring Sydney in and to get her involved in the making of the presentation, and then also for her to be involved later in the actual presenting of her PowerPoint. Okay, now that we've talked a lot about Sydney's strengths, we're going to talk a little bit about the places that Sydney has challenges with. It's the best IEP meeting I have ever been a part of. This is my 8th year teaching. Just having a celebration of the student and having the student involved was the most wonderful. It's all about the student, and that's what it should be.
Perfect. I really like both of those videos, and like Mallory sent in the chat with Garrett, it's really great because all stakeholders are really involved. And I think it plays back on this theme of nothing about me without me, and involving these students, whatever age in their IEP, is really, really important. And so now we're going to talk about some, real quick, if you are interested in any of these videos, there are several on the Intelligent Lives website. I'm going to drop the link in the chat as well. Or Mallory's got it, I think. But these are really great high quality films by Dan Habib. And I believe that's who it was by, right, Mallory? Dan Habib, yes. And so there are some great options on this website to really explore transition and some of those things.
There are study guides on there to go along with the videos. They'd be a great thing to do in a PLC meeting, and can be even done in the classroom with, a group of your students as well.
Yes, so some great videos on there. Oh, it's on there twice. Anyways, so the big thing with student involvement in IEP that we're going to suggest today is that you can really start small. And so we have some main strategies that you can use to get students involved in their IEP meetings. So the first thing we're going to talk about is one-pagers. And so one-pagers are a great quick look guide that the students can be involved in of making it all about them. And so this can involve their strengths, need, preference, interests, as well as goals they're working on, accommodations they need, maybe things that do and don't work. And so the I'm Determined one-pagers are a really great resource. Oops, I skipped way ahead. Let me go back real quick. And so those are downloadable and you can fill those out and use. I'm also going to show you some other great ones that we've just created, and that, as well as if you're on our Canvas site, very back at the way beginning on our first discussion, Mallory even has a kind of one-pager all about me discussion we did, and that is not included in this PowerPoint, but that's a great one-pager as well. I just thought about it. So first, this is actually a one-pager that Mallory has used for her daughter, Presley. And so this really highlighted Presley, I think when she was in preschool, I believe. Yeah. And so it shows, things she likes. She really likes getting pampered and getting her nails done, and really loves going and getting food. We laugh when we all go to the cafeteria. She loves Chick-fil-A and those types of things, but she really dislikes loud noises and pickles. And then it shows that, she really likes routines and schedules and singing and being outside. And so this is a great way of incorporating her. And so you can include actual pictures of her. So there's things doing the things she likes and things she's interested in, as well as fun little graphics to represent, hey, just so you know, Presley really doesn't like loud noises. And so that's something really important for teachers to know. But this can really easily play into those IEP plans. So here's another one for one of our students in Sooner Works. And so this was a one-pager really focused on their transition plan. So where they wanted to learn at Sooner Works at OU. Where they wanted to live in a dorm on campus. Where they want to work, they wanted an internship at the National Weather Center. And what did they want to participate, that community participation? They wanted to be a part of Alpha Gamma Delta, so in a sorority and those sorts of things. As well as here is a one-pager template. I think Mallory's going to drop it into the chat as well. This is actually, so on the left-hand side is what the template looks like. But on the right-hand side is, I actually did it for, had my brother do it. He is a senior in high school this year. So this is something he felt like were the important things to include on his one-pager. And then I took his picture off because he didn't want me to share it. So it's a little graphic, but this is a great way to include those things. So on my brother's, it's all things that were off his IEP plan. So his strengths, things that work for him in the classroom. He really needs those explicit directions, modeling, things like that, as well as things that don't work, because that was something that is really important for teachers to know, that maybe sudden changes to plans or lacks of consistency may really stress out a student, and they might have behaviors because of those things. And so those are great things to highlight on this as well. And you don't have to do it in like a super negative way. Like I really loved this wording of what doesn't work for me. And so if you click on the link or use the QR code scanner, it will take you to a place to make a copy of this. If you've never used Canva before, I highly suggest it. And so it's just basically an online webpage to create flyers and PowerPoints and all sorts of things. But you'll be able to make your own copy of this, and you can change it up. You can change the background if you want something more plain, insert those photos, all of those things. And so this is a great thing for some of those those students that are in the gen ed classroom a lot and may need a little more support. I think about my brother as he really started advocating for his own needs recently, and that became him being almost all his classrooms are now in the gen ed environment. And so for him, it's really important that his teachers understand what works for him and for him to get support. So again, one-pagers are a great way to do this. Just a quick look guide at the students in an individualized manner. So it tells those most important pieces of information to help succeed. Then we kind of go on to those IEP meetings. So in the IEP meeting, what can we do? First, there's IEP scripts that can be used. This specific script was we got from the self-directed IEP. And so it really goes through the whole IEP. This is so-and-so, they do this. This is so-and-so, they do this, as well as talking about why they invited them. Hopefully, if your student is at the IEP meeting, they should know everybody in that meeting, whether it's their speech path, OT, PT, their family administration, teachers, all of those people should be familiar. And so introductions is a great way to start incorporating them into that meeting, because students typically should be like, this is my mom and she's here because she's my mom. This is my teacher, Miss Pratt, and she's here because she teaches math, or whatever it may be. As well as then you can use these scripts to go into those more specific areas. So summarizing goals and talking about how they're going to achieve those goals. And so, and that way you really are hitting those key components of IEP meetings that you have to have, talking about all the goals, all the services, accommodations, all of those things. So to download the IEP scripts, it's here. There, I believe, is like a basic and then a more advanced version. And so for your students, you can easily differentiate this. And if you don't love this script, you can use this and create your own. And that's something kind of with all of these, if you really think back to all those one-pagers we just presented, every single one was different and unique, but portrayed different things. So the same thing with IEP scripts, as well as IEP PowerPoints, which I'm going to go to next, but I will give you guys 1 second if you want to type this in or look it up. Oh, I think it changed on me. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and type this in there for you. Okay, so then the next one is I'm Determined. I'm Determined is a great site for, that was one of the one-pagers earlier on, as well as they also have IEP, like student-led IEP PowerPoints that you can download and edit and individualize and all of those things. So this is a great resource as well if you want students to start doing that. They have an elementary version, not just high school. So it really can go through. And so if this is something that you want to propose to your district or kind of incorporate through the grades, it's a great building block. This one is actually one I helped create as well in a class project several semesters ago. It is very similar to the one from I'm Determined, but a little more individualized. I use this in the middle of the pandemic. I attempted to use this with most of my students. So this one was kind of created more for those 3rd through 5th grade elementary age students, but realistically could be used for any grade level. And so I specifically had incorporated pictures and little clip art and stuff like that for the students in this one, but you can also easily do actual words and have them type it up and be involved in this process themselves. There is actually an entire lesson tied to this. It's an entire activity, so the PowerPoint's there, but there's also a lesson plan and a little like strengths and weaknesses bingo game that goes with this as well. I know we've talked about our personal teacher pay teachers site a couple times, but I really do stress that that's a great resource and it's all free. And so it is updated pretty regularly. Later on, I think I have a slide that has the QR code and link to that as well. Oh yes, so then I said, check out the Teachers Pay Teachers for more of those. So there are so many free resources for one pagers, IEP PowerPoints, all about me pages, all those sorts of things. But as well, you can easily make your own template or have students make their own template and use what they think is important in that. So here is that Teachers Pay Teachers site. If you have ever gone to our personal website, we often update that with new resources as well, but more commonly, it's actually easier to put things on our Teachers Pay Teachers. So things are being added there all the time. We're constantly working on more lesson plans and individualized resources and things like that. So if you are interested in exploring that, that link is in there. So the next thing, big thing, and I know we talked about it at the coaching session, the last full day coaching session, but the bell ringers are such a great resource to use in the classroom. And so students, I put the link in there, but these transition bell ringers, we have 4 different now. We have the original Me bell ringers, the fundamental bell ringers, which are now available in Spanish, thanks to one of our wonderful doctoral students, Isela. And so if you're interested in having a copy of the Spanish one, please reach out and we can get that to you. As well as there's one for math and one for daily and independent living skills. So these are easily little 1-slide activities that you could do like a bell ringer or transition Tuesdays or these things. And they have great questions for students to really get them thinking about these transition goals and thinking about these important things to really include them in that process of what goals you create, whether it's their post-secondary goals or their annual goals. And typically these bell ringers only take about 10 to 30 minutes. So I have a copy of several. So this is an example of one from the original. And so talks about self-awareness, and students are asked to list 10 words or phrases to describe the person they admire most. As well as attached to each slide is a
self-awareness.
It speaks it.
List 10 words or phrases to describe the person you admire the most.
Perfect. And so these are just great examples. So here's another one. This one's from the fundamental bell ringers. So it says, what do you feel you are good at doing? It can be at school or at home. And so you give students that time to, whether it's a stop and jot or a quick bell ringer, those sorts of things to really get this transition mind going. There's some on disability awareness. And so this can play into knowing about themselves and learning about famous people with disabilities. And so these are all great resources to really engage students in that process and get them thinking about themselves as well as living in a world that does have disabilities. I have some examples of I have lots of examples in here, but it talks about even this question. I love this. If you could invite anyone you wanted to your IEP, who would it be and why? I think it's Mindy, but one of our directors here at the Zaro Institute often talks about how they had a student invite one of their friends to their IEP meetings and how it was such an influential thing to have them there and really showed the full picture of that student. And so again, these are all available on the website. And so ask questions. Where do you see yourself? Here's what the Spanish one looks like. And so Isel did a great job working through these. These also have the sound on them as well. So we'll
Como
see
me
that.
veo a mí mismo o a mí misma. Escribe una cualidad tuya, algo que haces muy bien. Puede ser en la escuela o en la casa.
And not that I speak Spanish, but that is great. And it's a really great resource to allow these students to do it. And it's not just in English now. So, and I believe the plan is for her to continue to translate these, as well as I have a couple examples of the daily and independent living bell ringers. So they talk about things like housing. So would you rather live here or there? Why? And talks about, okay, are these things, do you know that when you should go to the doctor, when you should use a first aid kit, those things. And this all can really be used to help formulate that transition plan. So this goes back to including students in the process of building that plan. And then you can use the one-pagers and the IEP PowerPoints to really highlight that and allow them to take leadership in those roles. Okay, so I'm kind of gonna break it down. Hold on, that went way too fast. So kind of what does this look like at each grade level? So I think early elementary, it's really simple to start this process using those one-pagers. I think back to the one that we put on there of Mallory's daughter Presley, and how perfect that would be for a preschool student or an early elementary student, as well as you can choose a couple of those steps from the self-directed IEP, whether it is introducing everybody or talking about their interests or even the conclusion, just starting small. And that way, once they hit kind of that late elementary, you can start using those fundamental transition bell ringers. And you can use it instead of maybe having them journal, use it as like a classroom discussion time. Talk amongst their peers and hear their input, as well as there's the main curriculum. And you can introduce students to these ideas of what special education is, what disabilities are, how to be aware, self-determination skills. You can kind of start incorporating more of those steps from the self-directed IEP. Maybe you start using an IEP PowerPoint template or implementing a more specific one-pager, or maybe you have them do a research project on disabilities in general, or maybe the disability they may have. And so then students, as they progress in middle school, when you've done these things, they're more able to start taking those transition assessments, continuing those bell ringers. Maybe you have mock IEPs to practice with their peers or to practice with teachers or different things. You start incorporating those IEP scripts so that they can really take ownership and leadership in those IEP meetings. Continue the use of those PowerPoint presentations, as well as start using the SDLMI to really incorporate that in your classroom so you can measure their goals and how they're performing in these IEP meetings. So that once you're at the high school level, you can really use this Tying the Knot curriculum, the ME, more of those transition bell ringers, whether it's the math and personal financial literacy ones or the independent living ones, as well as continuing to move forward with using things like the choice maker, and even maybe having them make their own PowerPoint, letting them have more freedom with, hey, these are the things you need to talk about, but maybe you don't give them a model or something and give them a lot of ownership and responsibility in that, and then allow them to start leading that meeting. And so, like I said, this can really grow and build. And so it's a really great resource if you are close to, like, if you're a high school teacher and you know the middle school teachers, and you guys can start building that bridge of collaboration to really support students throughout their education. So I know that was a lot of information to give you guys, but I want you to take a second to think and share maybe a strategy or two of what we talked about that you think will help your students be involved in IEP, and maybe set a goal for doing that next year. So if you really liked the one pagers, maybe your goal will be in August, I will have all my students create a one pager to give to their gen ed teachers. Or maybe it's you want to start making a PowerPoint template for your students. So I'll give you a couple minutes to think about what you might want to take from this into your next school year so that you can either unmute yourself and share out or feel free to type it in the chat box. Yes, I love the idea of using the bell ringers as community circle time. Well, I think too, there's a really great way of incorporating this into that academic instructional time. And so whether it's like ELA and you have them do a research project about disabilities and then create a presentation about it, or you have them create those one pagers or those things, you can easily tie in some of those academic benchmarks in there. Does anyone else have anything they would like to take away from this and maybe implement in their own classroom? Yes, using bell ringers and one pagers, yes. Ooh, invitations to their IEP meetings. Yes, I love that idea. I love that idea. And I think too, the more research shows, the more that students are involved in their IEP, the more that parents want to be there and involved and participate because they see how important it is. And so I love the idea of making these invitations. Yeah, I definitely, if I was back in the classroom, I think a big thing for me would be to emphasize this a little more. So I did a lot with a social skills group I had in my classroom, but I can see now how easily it would have been to incorporate this and with all of the students that I saw, not just a smaller group of them. So doing those bell ringers, even if it was once a week on, did a transition Tuesday or something to kind of get these topics really included in these conversations. Give you guys about a minute more. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to share? Inviting a business owner to the IEP meeting to share about career options. Yes, I love that idea. Yeah, having that people from the community come in and share and things. And even if you have them come in and talk to your class as a whole, and I think about students that do internships and things like that, including people that matter to them in that IEP meeting is really important. So thank you guys for sharing. So I know this was a very quick, like 40 minutes, hard and fast of what student involvement in IEP looks like, but we have an upcoming training that Mallory will be leading with the Oklahoma State Department on student involvement on the IEP. And so we will go over we will go over more in depth some of the stuff that we just went on, but it's going to be a full day training, a lot more resources and things. I don't know why Mallory said oops. Anyways, yes, sorry, the chat is like exploding right now. Yes, involving students in the IEP supports graduation. Yes, think of indicator 1 and 2. The one pagers are a valuable resource. Yes, so feel free to come to this training. It's free, it's all virtual. And it's also another one of the partnerships with us in the Oklahoma State Department of Ed. Is there any questions before I move on? Questions, concerns, comments, anything? I'm going to take that as a no. So before you go, just a reminder, we only have 2 more of these Tuesday check-in sessions. One is on April 26th, and it's over interagency collaboration. And the other one is on May 3rd, and it's over social and emotional learning and self-determination. And again, it'll be offered mornings and afternoons. If there's any other help or questions, concerns, any other topics you want covered that haven't been covered, feel free to either email the Zarrow Institute at ou.edu, or on the next slide has my personal email as well. That sometimes may be the best way to get a hold of one of us, and we can set you up with either one of us or another doctoral student that may have expertise in that specific area if you have specific questions or concerns. And as always, our Canvas is used to house everything. Later, we'll upload this PowerPoint as well as the recording of this session if you ever need to go back and look over it. And so here is the last little bit of contact information for myself, Mallory, and Lori, and she just jumped off, as well as I'm going to go ahead and put the tiny URL in here for the check-in for today, just so you guys can fill that out again, just in case you haven't done it, so that you can get credit for coming and participating today. And
Actually, Peyton, sorry, will you go back to the first slide and have it shown on here so those who are watching the recording can get there too?
like if my computer will let me do it.
The back.
There we go.
Here we go. Thank you.
And if you don't have any additional questions, comments, concerns, or anything, you guys are free to go. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and we will see you not next week, but the week after.